that discuss using this stuff. The problem is those guys are pros, and everything they make just comes out amazing. I'm not a pro, so I wanted to create a video showing you what happens when someone like me uses this stuff. So if you're thinking about buying it, you have some realistic expectations. And I have to say, I'm really happy with this. I ordered it from England because I couldn't find anybody selling it in the States. Got here in 5 days, which is pretty incredible. Actually, it's faster than some U.S. sellers. And here's a little test strip that I did. So let me just zoom in as close as I can. So in the center here, you're looking at the foam, which has been unworked. And this is where the asphalt was that I put down as sort of a test strip. And you can see when it dries, it looks pretty cool. It almost evaporates in such a way that it leaves that sort of textured, I don't want to say messy look, but if you look here, there's sort of like almost like a little pothole that you wouldn't get with just using the foam. Now you might notice that this is really smooth, and what I did was I applied it with a paintbrush first, and then after that was down, it looked, if you've ever used spackling before and you run a dry trowel or putty knife or something over it, it leaves those weird marks. So I dipped my finger into some water and just touched it, and the water dissipated into the terrain's asphalt and kind of smoothed it out, and this was the result. Now, when you use just let me show you what happens when you use just a trowel without smoothing it. Okay, so this was a piece of wood, just a little bit of 1x4. I think that's what this stuff's called. But I grabbed some of this, some scrap wood, and put it on with just a trowel. No, well, actually, that's not completely true. I put it on with a paintbrush first, real thick, because it's like if you took baking soda and added a little bit of water, or if you were to take spackling and add black paint, that's sort of how this stuff is. It's real thick. It's like a paste. And anyway, I put that on there with a paintbrush, and then I used this plastic trowel to just kind of smooth it out. And when there was these little clumps, I just left them alone. And then this is where I cleaned my trowel, just wiped it off. And I just want to see what it looked like. And if you look, it looks really cool. It looks sort of like a derelict road, and you can see the lines there from my trowel moving across. And then this is where I just scraped it off, almost like a truck had dumped some. And so this stuff is, I'm not a professional by any means, and I think this came out pretty good. You add, if you were to really zoom in on this and you add a little bit of grass, got some weathered paint on here, this looks like an old asphalt road. You could add some weathering and stuff like that. So this is what happens when you don't use water. Again, down here, this is what happens when come on, focus, work with me here. What's going on? There we go. 2021 printers and cameras, we still get them working right. So really, again, all I did is just to kind of show you, I put my finger in, so I had a drop of water, and I just touched it like that. See how it kind of dissipates into it? And I went along and repeated that process, and what happens is when your trowel leaves those weird marks, the water goes in and it kind of flattens it out, and then when it dries, even though it was smoothed out, it's still, I don't know, I'm pretty happy with that. I think it looks pretty good for somebody who's, not particularly skilled at this, so the results are good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and I'm actually going to do the entire area here and go over it and, do a time lapse. And then once it's dry, I'll show you the finished result. And again, this would be the second time I've actually tried this. And yeah, the only other thing I might add in is this is missing the foam in between it, because obviously I'm going to put some foam here so that trucks and things like that can drive over it. But yeah, once we're done, we'll take a look at it. I'll let it dry so you can see the finished results. And then I think this stuff cost me $13, with the exchange rate. And it doesn't look like it, but it's a big tub and it really goes far. So let's go ahead and get started on that, and then we'll see what it looks like when it's finished. All right, so I really hate it when a video skips right to the end. It doesn't show the process, and I thought, what? Let me just inject this into the video just in case you're interested in seeing what I did to get the final result. And you can always skip to the end. So if we take a look at the acrylic asphalt here in the tub, it is super thick, and it's almost if you took spackling and mixed it with like acrylic black paint. It's kind of like what it is. It's thick stuff.
But the reason why I bring this up is that if you look on the left side of the video here where the painter's tape is, you'll see two horizontal lines, and that's when I cut the foam that I picked up from Michael's. And I wasn't able to get the foam to correctly reach from the main line to the siding, and so I cut a couple awkward pieces and shoved them in there. And I had planned to spackle that in to make it look smooth, because obviously you don't want to see the cut lines. But I did a couple test areas, and this stuff is thick enough that when it goes over that, it fills it right in. And when it dries, which you'll see at the end of the video, you can't see it at all. You'll never know that I had those extra pieces there, which I think is kind of neat. So um, when I first started applying this, I did it with a paintbrush. And what you'll see as we go forward is that ends up being kind of cumbersome. It's hard on the paintbrush. And so instead, I grabbed the plastic spatula as opposed to what I did earlier and just kind of slopped it on and spread it all over with not no no real technique, just kind of trying to make it even. And then once I had, the area looking relatively good, now I'll do a close up in a second of how I do it with the spatula. Once I had most of it down, I then came back with the paintbrush and just gently, with long strokes, went across we'll call it the parking lot, went across the parking lot and it gave a nice smooth look because, you can make a real cool looking derelict road with this, but if you've got a bustling barrel factory which is going to be placed here and business is good, they're not going to have a busted up factory. It's not like it's a road out in the boondocks. And so instead, I wanted something that was kind of half-half. So, it looked good, but, it was smooth, but it kind of looked like a company came in, dropped it down. It was relatively affordable for the factory. And so it has some dips and rises in it, but nothing too crazy. And you'll see the finished result gets really close to what I was looking for. Like, this stuff is really, really awesome to work with. Like, I really can't say enough good things about it for, like I said, somebody really is not skilled at this. So you can kind of see here I'm getting frustrated. I decided to start slopping it on because I realized, this is going to take forever. And and so in any case, one thing that I want to bring up that's really nice about this stuff is when I went to peel the painter's tape, it left some sort of yeah, not ridges, but even if you pull it up when it's wet, it kind of leaves an obvious line where you put the asphalt compared to where there was not any asphalt. And there was sort of a lift between the parking lot and the ballast. And what's really, really nice about this stuff is if you take some water on a paintbrush and you dab the water on it, it will dissipate kind of the same way that solder does when you're soldering two tracks together and you heat up the solder and it just kind of melts into the joiners. That's kind of how this stuff is. And so if you look at the front of the video, see how it kind of clumps up like that? That happened on the painter's tape, but when I pulled up the painter's tape, I added some water and it drifted right into the ballast without, really coloring the ballast, and it looks like just a smooth transition from the ballast to the parking lot. So super, super easy to work with. So I'll go ahead and let you watch the last of this. And then we'll transition next into the dried version and how it came out. And I think you'll really like it. Totally worth the 10-15 bucks that this stuff costs.
All right, so I'm going to do my best to hold the camera straight here, and I would say this stuff is it's about 80% dry now, and it's relatively dry to the touch. A couple funny things happened. There's some cracks that developed. I'll show you those in a second and kind of explain what I think happened. But in any case, let's take a real close up here and look at the siding, and you can see some of the detail here. I used a paintbrush to kind of fill in that corner there, and I'll need to hit it with a little weathering and a paintbrush to get rid of some of that spackling left behind. But I really like the look, and in fact, let me grab a car here, get an idea. There you go. That looks pretty great. And at the edge here, now eventually I'm going to have another siding that's going to come into this, and it's going to be weathered and look kind of old and tattered. If you took a look here, I purposely didn't smooth this out just to kind of see what the final result was when it's a little bit more worn. So you see that looks like the parking lot was done. They kind of brought the truck here, and it's got that sort of worn out look. And then I was looking at some prototypical pictures online, and I noticed, they just kind of dump the asphalt. It's amazing for how much work we do on our layouts. When you look at the prototypical things in real life, I'm pretty sure they just go with whatever's cheap. And, it's in some cases, I've seen some really weird stuff on Google Earth where they just dump the asphalt right over the track, and it doesn't look good at all. So, don't worry about getting it perfect, but you can still see the foam block here, and I'll likely add a little bit more asphalt to make that sort of a smooth triangle into a rectangle shape. But in any case, let's look at some of the detail here. Basically, you can sort of see where my spatula was moving around, and as it's dried, it's got that sort of nice new lot texture, but still with some bumps. But take a look at these cracks. See that right there? And then we got a few more over here. And so what I think happened is it was drying real nice, and I'm actually kind of happy with this. I like the way it looks. But what happened me being impatient as always, I turned on the fan. And I think what happened is when the fan pointed on it, it started drying too quickly, and then these cracks developed. And that could be a really useful technique if that's what you're going for. So if you're looking for something more weathered, grab your fan, turn it on, and it'll crack. And in fact, I've put some on a board over there in the corner and turned the fan on just to see what'll happen, and it does look like it's going to start cracking again. So if you're going for that look and you have this stuff, just stick on the fan and it'll crack. So again, for me, this is not a disappointment. And if it was, you could fill this in pretty easily and go over it again. But I really like kind of that look. And to be honest with you, I hope it cracks a little more because it looks kind of cool. So anyway, that's it. That's AK Interactive Asphalt. Hopefully you found this video useful. Up next, I'm going to probably put the fence back, add the barrel factory, get a little bit of garbage in here, and then I plan to paint some black lines, filler lines with acrylic, and add a little bit of weeds. But I want to use static grass, and I don't own a static applicator yet. So when I do, I'll create a video on that. You can learn along with me. And so hopefully this was useful to you, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much for watching.